Another round of applause for my friend Alex Triantafilou. 34 years and counting, my friend. Alex was the chair of the Hamilton County Republican Party, and Alex, I'm not saying this to flatter you. You look the same back then as you do today. I really mean that, and it's probably it's a compliment today. I'll put it that way. So you've done a great job leading our party, uniting our party. I want to thank you for the leadership that we often need in our state to head in the right direction in a unified way, and I think you've done an outstanding job of that. And I know that Senator Husted and I were looking forward to doing our part this year and next as well. Think about the last 4 years in this country, last half decade. We went through a national identity crisis of historic proportion. Faith in God, patriotism, family, hard work, all but disappeared in so much of our country. Our young people, and I speak to you as a millennial myself, I turned 40 last month. People in my generation and younger were hungry to be part of something bigger than themselves, and yet so many could not even answer what it meant to be an American. Well, you know what? In November of 2024, I believe we got it right for the future of the country. When we voted with our feet at the ballot box, with ballots, not bullets, sending who I believe is the right president back to the White House to revive our patriotism and self-confidence in this country. But that's the first step of a revival that I think has a long way yet to go. And it's going to be the states that lead the way in America's path back to greatness. That's why I'm in this race, is I want to lead Ohio, our home state where I was born and raised, to be not just the best state in the Midwest, because frankly, I think we are already the best in the Midwest, all right? I went to Minnesota recently. I can confirm. We're doing great. We're the best in the Midwest. But I hope to lead Ohio to be the top state in the country, to raise a young family, to give your kids a world-class education, to be the state where we revive that idea of the American dream, that vision that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you get to have a good life for yourself and dream for an even better life for your kids. I know that American dream exists in this state because I have lived it growing up in this state. The kid of legal immigrants to Cincinnati, Ohio, 45 plus years ago, who came here with nothing, in a single generation, able to found multiple successful companies. Marrying my wife, Apurva, who, by the way, lived that same story, the kid of immigrants who came here with nothing to their name. She's now a successful throat surgeon at the cancer hospital at Ohio State. Raising our two boys, and hopefully our daughter soon, too. Coming in February, if all goes well. Apurva will appreciate that. Raising our kids in circumstances that our families would have never imagined when we were growing up just a few decades ago. Her in Michigan and Florida and New York, in my case in Cincinnati, Ohio. And to me, that is the American dream. And the extraordinary part about that story is that it's really not that extraordinary in the United States of America. And I don't want it to be extraordinary in the state of Ohio either. I want that to be the normal story for every kid. God willing, now I'm hopefully in a chance to lead that very state where I was born and raised, only possible in this country. Now, we were the state that used to set that national example, not Texas or Florida. For most of our national history, we were actually the state that led the way. We led the first industrial revolution. At the turn of the last century, we were actually the wealthiest state in the Union. Even in 1950, not that long ago, 6 of the top 15 wealthiest cities in America were right here in Ohio. Toledo, where I was recently, was the glass capital of the world. Akron was the rubber capital. Cleveland and Youngstown were the steel production capitals of the West. Dayton was the computing power engine that led the Industrial Revolution. My hometown of Cincinnati was known around the world as the Queen City. We were the state of the pioneers, the explorers, the unafraid. The state where every kid had the self-confidence to achieve the things they were taught to believe were impossible. Think about it. It's not an accident. That was the same Ohio that Neil Armstrong grew up in when he was born, raised, living in Ohio, becoming the first man in human history to walk on the moon. That was the same Ohio that raised John Glenn, first American to make it into orbit around the Earth, born, raised, living in Ohio as he did it. The same Ohio that sent the Wright brothers to the skies at a moment they were taught to believe that was crazy, born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. That is who we were. And I believe deep in my bones we can be that state again because we have every natural gift we did the first time around. From fertile farmland to a great geographic location for manufacturing, 60% of North America's population within a single day's drive of where we're sitting right now. Water to our north, natural gas to our east. God has blessed us with every gift. What we need to do is to believe in ourselves once again, to be that state who can lead us to national greatness. And I will tell you this, if Ohio was America's first frontier, we're about to be America's next frontier. If Silicon Valley led the way, it's the Ohio River Valley that's coming up next. Not with the Rust Belt, but with the Platinum Belt. We're ready to chase our future, building on agriculture, building on farming, building on our foundation, but also now chasing the sectors of the future. From semiconductor production to our defense industrial base, from biotech to even the state where we embrace AI and quantum computing, not to take old jobs, but to make new jobs through workforce training and education. That's our vision for this state. A modern-day Northwest ordinance. And you know what? That's going to require some change, positive change, building on a great foundation that we already have. We're a great state, but we're too ambitious to be complacent. Great is never good enough for us in Ohio. We aspire to even greater. I'd like to make 2 announcements, rollouts tonight. I know some of you probably are not at the edge of your seat. There aren't going to be any major surprises tonight, but the 2 things I did want to roll out, first of all, is what are our top 5 priorities in leading this state? I want to state it cleanly for all of you so you know what we're actually going to accomplish when we get in there. First is, it is a top goal for me to make sure that our young people actually remain in this state rather than moving out to pursue opportunity elsewhere. That's an important goal because we have more people now leaving our state than moving in, but it's generally driven by young working age people leaving. We're going to turn that around so we're not talking about workforce shortages anymore. And that's going to require economic changes like going to a zero income tax, starting with eliminating the capital gains tax, bringing down the property tax burden in this state, to be able to foster the American dream where young people actually have skin in the game and are participating in that upside through incentives that we create and we'll talk about through this campaign. That's number 1. Number 2 is unlocking energy abundance to power our manufacturing boom and our AI boom. We've got great natural gas underneath the ground. We need to use it. We have an opportunity to be the state that leads the way in small modular nuclear reactors and the energy of the future. That requires cutting red tape. Alex, we are a red state. That means we're not going to act like a state of red tape, okay? That means we're going to be the state where we build more homes to bring down the cost of housing, to building more manufacturing plants, building that life in the mold of the American dream. That's number 2, energy drives us there. Number 3 is turning around the educational achievement crisis in our country, starting right here in the state of Ohio. That's the ball game. Economic excellence and educational excellence are 2 sides of the same coin. Today, across our country, the average student in China is 4 years ahead of the average student in the United States. That's unacceptable. And we are going to be the state that sets an example for the other 49 states to actually aspire to. To say that if you can't read by the end of 4th grade, by the end of 3rd grade, you're not going to go to 4th grade until you can. Algebra competency by 8th grade, civic competency by the end of high school. Every high school senior having to pass the same civics test that every legal immigrant has to pass before that immigrant becomes a voting citizen. Bring our standards back. Expect more of each other, of our children and ourselves. That's number 3. Number 4 is ending the crisis of urban crime plaguing cities across the country, but to set an example of how we turn that around in Ohio. Because here's what's special about our state. Unlike our peer states, like Georgia, where they have one great city, Atlanta, we have so many great cities. We are a state of cities. Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Youngstown, Dayton. It's one of our great competitive advantages to attract businesses, to keep those young people here, to rebuild a thriving culture we can be proud of, to go to your city to enjoy a good evening without fear of getting mugged or beaten up or, God forbid, assaulted from over the Rhine in Cincinnati to the inner city of Cleveland, even the short north in Columbus. That is your birthright as an Ohioan and as an American. That's who we are as a first world country. And it's not that complicated. We're going to talk much more about this on Friday in Cincinnati, where we're going back for another town hall. It turns out that the overwhelming majority of crime in our cities is committed by a really, really, really small number of people. And we know who they are. And on my watch, we're going to work with our city leaders to get those people off the streets. How do you know who they are? They commit crimes repeatedly. It's time to get them either in a psychiatric institution or a prison where they belong so we can use our cities with pride. Thank you. That's our fourth priority, and our fifth will be the one that I close on tonight. Will be to restore a positive culture of open dialogue with our fellow citizens, and to set an example of what that looks like for our country. We lost a good patriot and, for me, a personal friend in the recent weeks, Charlie Kirk. And it provides a chance for us to reflect on who we are as Americans. We're the place on God's green earth where we could disagree vehemently and still get together at the dinner table at the end of it. That was the Ohio that I grew up in. And I think we're a special state in that regard. So you can go to Texas or Florida. You drop a pin in Florida, you draw a circle around it, you got a cross-section of Florida. You drop a pin in Texas, you draw a circle around it, you got a cross-section of Texas. You go anywhere in Ohio, you draw a 200-mile radius, for example, of where we're sitting right now. You've got a cross-section of the United States of America. And I think that gives us a special opportunity and, I believe, obligation to set the best possible example of our free speech culture in action. And I'll close with a story from my travels across the campaign trail this year. Started in Lucas County in Toledo when we had our third Lincoln Day dinner, Alex, where there was a line. I was signing books and taking photos, and there was a man in the back of the line. He was there with his son. He waited for about 30 to 40 minutes. He took his picture. I was making some small talk at the end, and I said, "Well, where's your wife tonight?" And he looks at the ground, and he says, "Well, she's actually one of the protesters outside." Which I thought was funny, because who agrees with their wife on everything anyway? I know, even my wife and I don't. We still love each other, okay? So that's America. So we go to Wayne County, Ohio, later that spring. It's a hot day in May of this year, maybe in May or June. About 700 people inside, but there's protesters again outside. My commitment is we're always going to talk to the protesters. We're going to go out and have a conversation with them. I go out. There's a woman. She's screaming at me. She says, "Why are you cutting our veterans' benefits?" I'm shocked. I said, "We're not cutting your veterans' benefits." She said, "No, you're cutting our veterans' benefits. Why are you doing it?" I said, "Ma'am, a governor can't do it. It would be a horrific campaign slogan to run on. And most importantly, we stand for our veterans. So tell me where you heard it." She thought about it for a second, and she said, "Well, I don't know. I heard it somewhere." It's modern life. I said, "Well, you know what? You and I are here talking face to face tonight. I'm here to tell you we're not cutting your veterans' benefits. Where did you serve?" She said, "I served in Vietnam." It's a Vietnam War veteran coming because somebody on some media or social media or whatever convinced her that I'm running for governor to cut her veterans' benefits. We said, "Come on in tonight. Why don't you join us? We'll seat you at the head table. Just see what you think tonight. What do you say?" She said, "Deal." And I give her credit because she's dressed, men in suit and ties. You got women in beautiful dresses. She's in a sweaty T-shirt and a hot Saturday afternoon as an older woman coming into a Republican event that she came to protest. She sat there the whole night. We watched her loosen up over the course of the evening. You could just see it in her body language. And so we said, "If you're a veteran in the room, please stand up." About 30 people stood up. The entire room applauded. She was one of them standing. And it turned out, we told the room, you know what? She's a Vietnam War veteran who's standing. She got emotional. And we called her up on stage. So we're going to give you the mic for a couple of minutes. You came here to be heard, just a couple minutes, but you came here to be heard, and we're going to let you be heard inside tonight. And she looked at the audience. She faced the audience and she said, "You all have changed my perspective on Republicans tonight." And I thought that was progress. One woman in Wayne County, Ohio, on one hot Saturday night. That's what this country's made of. That's Ohio at our best. That's America at our best. We're not just a bunch of diverse, differentiated, two-legged higher mammals walking some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. Looks like it at times, but we don't have to stay that way. We're still a people bound together by those common ideals that set this country into motion. E pluribus unum means from many one. That's what won us the American Revolution. That's what reunited us after the Civil War. And that's the vision that I hope we are able to revive and embody through the right character of leadership here in Ohio. Not what we're running from anymore, but what are we running to? We're running to the gold standard, the shining city on a hill that embodies America at our best. So with due respect to our friends in Texas and Florida, thank you for your service over the last couple of years. Now your turn's out of the way. It's now Ohio's turn to lead the way. So thank you guys for the warm welcome and hearing out our priorities for this campaign. Which brings me to the second major announcement, the one you're on the edges of your seat for. I know you've been waiting for this. A lot of suspense, but I wanted to take a moment to share with you, for the first time officially, something that I have been long committed to doing, which is to endorse my friend, a patriot, and a great public servant to Ohio, my friend Jon Husted, to continue as our next senator in the 2026 election. Johnny, you've been an outstanding friend to me. When I first came to Ohio, we had a mutual friend who introduced us. I'll let you talk about our friend a little bit, but we had a mutual friend who put us together. And he said, there's a guy who you actually need to know. He's coming up in Ohio politics, and I didn't know that I wanted to enter politics, but I'd written this book, Woke Inc., and he said, this is a guy who's going to actually help you think about things, and he's a thought partner. And Jon had a habit. It was during the COVID pandemic in the early days when we were introduced, and he would go for these long walks. He would just call me during his walk, and at that time, nobody in the country knew who I was. Many people still can't pronounce my name, but back then, nobody even knew who I was. And Jon Husted would just call me when he had a thought. He didn't have to do that. There's a guy who he's recently introduced to by a mutual friend, and we would talk about anything from biotech to potentially the distribution of medicines to how to reopen the economy. And I appreciated that, Jon, because you were one of the people who inspired me to take the step actually into the arena, not just from being a commentator writing books, not just as an entrepreneur succeeding for myself and my family, but to see a man who also had a family, who cared deeply about his family, but served this state and served this country not as a trade-off to being a father, but precisely because he was a family man and a father and cared about his family and knew he had to do his part to lead our state to greatness, who helped lead this state for the last, nearly 8 years at this point, by the time we'll be taking over, in a way that gives us a foundation. You can leap to higher heights if you're jumping from a stable foundation, and that's what we have because of the work that you put in along with Governor Mike DeWine. And so with that, I want to thank you, Jon Husted, and announce tonight my official endorsement for the senator and the great senator from Ohio, Jon Husted. Please come to the stage. Thank you, my friend.
All right, you having fun? Isn't Vivek tremendous? Doesn't he have a great vision for Ohio? It's great to see all of you out there tonight. Such wonderful faces with enthusiasm and hope for the future. But I want to share one point about what this is all about. Tonight is about the fact that we have one team and one mission, and that mission is victory in 2026. I know, Mr. Chairman, that the idea that you would have a united Republican ticket in September of the year before the election is an amazing thing. But you want to know something? It helps when you have great leaders at the top. And two of the great leaders that helped make this happen were Donald Trump, the President of the United States, and J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. It is true that I was introduced to Vivek by J.D. Vance. At the time, JD was an author, and Vivek was centering his life in Ohio, and JD Vance got the two of us together. And then later on, I had this group that I pulled together as Lieutenant Governor called Innovate Ohio, where we were looking to make government more efficient and more entrepreneurial environment in Ohio. And guess who my advisory board members were? JD Vance, Bernie Moreno, Vivek Ramaswamy. I think I got a pretty good eye for talent. What do you think? But Vivek and I both know we have an important responsibility next year to lead the ticket at the federal level and at the state level. And we know that that comes with an incredible responsibility to help run great campaigns so that we can lift the entire Republican team, so that we can go forward to victory. And we know that we won't be alone, because we know that President Trump will be here, Vice President Vance will be here, and all of you will be here working side by side with us to get a victory in 2026, won't you? But I think the critical part of this campaign for me is the fact that I am an Ohio guy with Ohio values, and I will fight for those values when in Washington, D.C. Our values are the values that place needs more of, not to be captive of the coastal elites like it has been in the past, but a place where the values, the good, hardworking Midwestern values, are center. The values that the people of Ohio have are center to what we do as a nation. And I think a lot of you know my story, where those values came from. I started out life in a foster home in Detroit, Michigan. And then I had the great blessing of being adopted by Jim and Judy Husted. My mom and dad taught me, we were growing up on County Road J outside of Montpelier, Ohio. I know where you all know where that is, right? And, growing up there with my dad working at Mohawk Tools in the machine tool business and growing up rural, they just taught me great values. Values of hard work, personal responsibility, family, faith, freedom, and patriotism. You got to love your country. You got to value the sacrifices that came to make us free. You got to know that hard work is a virtue, and that when you have that work ethic, that you can do anything in life, and that family is the most important institution in our nation, the family and the church that help hold us together. They are the cement of our culture. Those things matter, and those are the values that I grew up with, and those are the values I will fight for in the U.S. Senate. Will you send me back to do that? And here's an important point, though. I told when Governor DeWine decided he was going to appoint me to the job, I had less than 24 hours notice before I was going to have to say my goodbyes to all my friends that I work with at the State House and talk about what America was going to be about. And it was pretty clear to me what message the voters sent in the last election, that they wanted an America First agenda. And what that meant was not that we were to be isolationists, but that we were to fight for the people of this country. We were to fight for Made in America. And that was easy for me, because you know what? You can't do Made in America without Made in Ohio, because we make the things that people need to live and thrive, don't we? But I also know this, that there are too many people on the political left that want to cast America's economy as a pie in which we're all trying to fight over the pieces. They don't believe that both businesses and workers can succeed, but I do. I believe that when we grow the pie, businesses can succeed, workers can succeed, and we can create a rising tide that lifts all boats. That's what the American dream is about. That's what America is about, and that's what we're going to do in this country, leading with Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, and this team that we have in Ohio. We are going to drive an America First agenda that puts Ohio at the top, and we're not just going to be best in the Midwest, but we're going to be best in the nation. Now, it is football season. I am a former college football player, so I hope you will indulge me in telling some football stories. not about myself, although I did get a chance to play on a national championship team. But I've been on lots of great teams in my life. I know what great teams look like. Yeah, they're made up of talent. They're made up of talent. You have to have talented people. But you also have to have tough people. You also have to have hardworking people. You have to have people that when they get knocked down, they will get back up. And that they will do what is necessary to get the job done. And that they will play their role on the team. You have a role in this team. I have a role in this team. Vivek Ramaswamy has a role in this team. We all are part of the team that is trying to drive this better future for not only this day, but for tomorrow, for our children and grandchildren. I tell you what, I'm so blessed. Not only did I have great parents that taught great values, I have a wonderful wife. A lot of you in the room know Tina, don't you? And our son Alex, daughter-in-law Kathleen, granddaughter May. We have we have a great family, and our daughters Katie and Kylie. They're just wonderful, and we're a family that believes in service to the Lord, and service to the public, and that we know that with service comes sacrifice, and that also is part of being a team. Whether it's a football team or your family, it's the same team, but we have a Republican team here. And I want to talk about the man who will be the next governor of the state of Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy, for a bit, who will play an important role on this team, not just politically, but as a thought leader, not just for Ohio, but for the nation. A spokesperson, a relentless fighter for our values who can go toe-to-toe with anybody in this country and talk about why we believe what we believe. And I will just say this about Vivek, because I did come to know him over time. We built our friendship during the pandemic because we were talking all the time about how to solve so many of these problems, because I know he had great knowledge about biotech from his business. But he loves America. He loves Ohio. And he has the vision to make us number one, not just in the Midwest, but in the nation. He's a devoted husband and father. He understands how important families are to the future of our country and that we need to support them. And he understands innovation and the importance of small businesses. Like, he gets it. Like, he gets what it's like to be a business owner, to be a creator, to grow the economy, to grow jobs, to create opportunity. And he is a champion of freedom and our conservative values and ideals. And it is... I will tell you this. Some people ask me, but does he have the fire in the belly? Do you think he has the fire in the belly? Yeah, he does. He's got the fire in the belly, the courage to fight, the talent to get it done, and the work ethic to see it through to the end, see it through to victory. And that's our team. That's the team we have. We have a wonderful team, and we'll need your help. But tonight, I want to make it official. It's not something that will catch you by surprise. But I want to endorse Vivek Ramaswamy to be Ohio's next governor. He's my friend. He will be a great leader, and we will be a great team. But now I want to close with this. We have a great blessing that has been delivered to us from the hard work of people who came before us. That is a great nation as we near our 250th anniversary. We have a Republican Party that is winning in the state of Ohio, but there is no guarantee. There's no guarantee that our nation will be here 50 years from now without the dedicated commitment of sacrifice and service to our nation. The people, men and women of law enforcement, the men and women of our military, the people who are willing to come together to hold the values of our country and what it stands for above anything else. To love our God, to love our families, to love our country. And to do that, it's going to take an amazing team effort, because 2026 will be a tough year. But together, with Vivek, with our team, with all the federal candidates, with all the state candidates, with all the local candidates, and all of you, the activists and leaders of the Republican Party, we will deliver a victory in 2026, and may God bless us in this vision, and may God bless America. Thank you very much.